Hey everyone, my name is Damien and welcome to Maple Leaf MTB. So in today's video we are doing something that's been needed to do for a very long time, and that is to service the shock on my 2021 Trek Felix 7. So I've been absolutely beating this shock up. By the way, this is a Fox Float Evol DPS. It is a 130mm travel with 3-position damper. Just your very straightforward shock's FOC. It's in dire need of service because it's just the amount of abuse I've been throwing at it. I haven't been cleaning it too often, just like my fork. And plus the reason the riding season is over, it is pretty cold here in the winter, especially if you live here in Ontario, southern Ontario. It's nasty. So I finally found some time to do the service, so let's get in the video. So to do this job, you need the corresponding service kit for your shock, some rubber nitride gloves, a shock pump, a couple of picks to help with those seals, I guess a knife and some pliers if you do need those, a microfiber cloth, paper towels, shop towel, whatever works, and some isopropyl. Now quickly before starting the service, it's important to make sure to examine the shock for any scratches, dents, or any damage that may prevent a successful service or even void warranty of servicing this shock. As you can see, my spacers are a little damaged and my seals are dirty, but that's completely normal. Alright, starting off, you want to remove the little spacers here that I just dropped off the, only just the bottom portion of the shock, so you can take the actual spacers off, and that will help you actually be able to slide off the air can. The next step is to remove the actual shock spacers. Unfortunately, I was having a very tough time. These were literally seized on, just like pretty much every single part on this bike. Aside from that, I did manage to get it off with a little bit of help of my teacher. If you're wondering, I was in school during this video simply because I do not have a vise at home. That definitely helps a lot if you do have a vise to do this shock service. Anyways, let's skip to the part where it is actually off. Now, taking these spacers off, you want to be careful because inside there are these tiny little black O-rings. You do not want to lose those because those will cause corrosion, and eventually it could even damage your part completely. As you can see, there's two on there, one for the first one and one for the bigger one. So make sure you have those removed first. Now, of course, being careful, that O-ring is going to come off very easily since it's not tight. But now the next step is to clamp this into your vise. Of course, you don't need a vise, although it would be much easier to do so since you can use more leverage and torque to loosen the air can. Now quickly, the most important step to do before removing the air can is to remove all the air from the shock. If you don't, very bad things will happen. So the way the shock unscrews is to the left, which is facing you, also known as counterclockwise. Once you do unscrew it, just gently pull off the air can. It will be stuck on there a little bit because of the negative air chamber. Now, a nice step you could do is put on the gloves, and that will basically prevent finger oils or sweat or any sort of moisture mixing with the fresh oil or the clean shock, which can cause damage further on. So with that, we can go ahead and get the alcohol and spray a nice amount inside the air can as well as the outside, giving it a nice thorough clean before we take out the seals. So the first thing we remove is the main seal here, or the dust wiper. This is at the very bottom. It's a little flimsy there, but it should come out pretty easily. Another thing I'd like to do is to match up, of course, the old wipers and the seals with the new ones, so that it's very easy to determine which is which, and it will make the service go a lot smoother. So the next step is to remove the little seals inside the air can. First thing you remove is the black main seal that holds all the oil in there. Then after that, it is pretty easy to remove the white compression rings. A cool little trick I learned is that the way you take them out is you basically grab them with the seal, you push them out forward, and then you push them down to form sort of a V shape. This also works for putting them back in and makes it much easier. And don't worry about these seals bending, as these are old ones, and the new ones too, they will eventually get back into shape. Now, like always, before reassembling the shock, it's always nice to clean the inside of those little crevices, especially the little space where the seals go, as that's where most dirt actually piles up, and that can mix with oil and cause further seal damage and lower the shock life expectancy. Now preparing the little white compression rings here, give it a nice little dab of the Fox fluid or whatever oil you're using. This will make them much easier to go in. And like I said earlier, the best way to put them in is to bend them into a sort of a V shape and then push them into the little spot. After the first little white compression ring, go ahead, lube up the outside and the inside of the main seal, and that will be put in next in sort of the same pattern. Once you're done installing these O-rings and seals, apply a nice thin coating of the Fox fluid to them. Lastly, doing the same, lubing up and of course installing the last white compression ring into the little seal space. Almost forgot about this. Make sure to put a nice coating of that float fluid, of course, on the main dust wiper seal and installing that as well onto the air can. Now with the air can service done, we can go ahead and spray down the microfiber cloth with some isopropyl and clean the stanchion as well as the shaft of the shock. We can actually take off these little these little red bottom out spacers here. Just make sure to put them on in the right orientation. And very similar to the air can, we can go ahead and take out the black main seal here, as well as the white compression rings. Now, if you do have a hard time with the air can, I can assure you this will go much easier. One step I did forget to record was removing the main air seal. Basically how you get to that is you remove the volume spacer at the top, and then you should be able to see a nice thin little black seal. You remove that, clean it, and add in the new one, which are these small little rings you'll see just above the float fluid in this clip. Now reassembling it, make sure to lube up the little white compression ring, then installing that onto the little seal area. After that, the black seal as well as the next white compression ring. Now when installing this, make sure the beveled or diagonal little ends there, they don't overlap. They just sit perfectly together so that the white spacer is completely straight. Before reinstalling, make sure to lube up the stanchion shaft over here so it's much easier to slide on the air can. With a little bit of force, it will go on, of course making sure that the seals are not overlapping or nothing has folded, as that can cause problems. And now, of course, to put it back on, you are fighting the pressure of the negative air chamber. So make sure before you also do that to squirt in about 2 cc's. So that is equivalent to about 2 milliliters. I put in about 3, just a little bit of extra. Of course, not too much inside the air can to keep everything lubed up in there. Like I said earlier, you will be fighting the pressure of the negative air chamber, so make sure just to get a nice grip on the air can sliding it up and then threading it in into the shock assembly. Now you can absolutely torque down the air can. You don't actually have to. Mine is just pretty hand tight. I do have a good grip, so I do manage to tighten that pretty tightly. So for me, it shouldn't be a problem. For installing the spacers, make sure to go ahead and align the shaft. Do this to the best of your ability before you go ahead and put on your bike, which then you can later correct. And just like that, we've serviced this shock. Wasn't too bad after all, wasn't it? And don't be a silly willy like me and forget to put on the sag indicator. Alright, if you guys liked the video and actually learned something, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and maybe subscribe. And of course, if you guys have any questions or concerns, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer them. I have more videos coming very soon, starting this mid-spring, so I cannot wait to start making that. Aside from that, thank you guys so much for watching again. Ride safe and have a good one.
My head's itchy as hell.